I got my parts in. I gotta clean up the bench here. I'll shut you guys down and clean this mess up here so I got somewhere to work. But I got my parts in from C&G. I buy a lot of my Dennis Carpenter type stuff or anything else from C&G because they're fairly local to me. They're out of California. And they basically carry a lot of Dennis Carpenter parts, and as you all know, it takes quite a while to get stuff from the East Coast to West Coast. So having this stuff available at C&G really helps me out in getting things done faster. Basically the same price. So it's nice that they carry their stuff. It makes it great for us West Coast guys. Picked up some door panel clips because I noticed there was a whole crap load of them missing on the one I got, and that's why the door panel is all over the place. This is a gasket for the Speedo. I noticed when I was taking it apart it was starting to tear, so I wanted to get at least one gasket as a spare in case I tore it. I don't need a simple gasket holding up the process. And this is a lens. I don't want to unwrap it, but it's a reproduction instrument cluster lens. Mine looked a little cruddy. I should have put one in. I kind of redid the dash in my other truck, but I was cheap Charlieing it. So, and this here is what they call this back plate for the instrument cluster. And this one here is for gauges for the proper year. Like I said, my dad had a bunch of these, but the only one he had was that one, and it was broke for 76. And it's just a 75 is essentially the same, except it didn't have high beams in 74, 75, which I thought was really weird. So the non-gauge cluster backing plates only are good from 76 to 79, or the other number is from 73 to 75, which doesn't have the high beam indicator. And then of course you have your gauge cluster, which is a different part number. I think it's still the same, 73 to 75 and 76, 79. I think. Don't quote me on that. I just know these because I was dealing with this. I'll have to order one for my 78 for long because it was getting a little punky too. I actually assembled my 78 cluster out of some spare parts from Dad, so I was able to get it going again without having to buy a new backing. But really, these are reasonable. I mean, considering how brittle these can get, but they were a lot more reasonable when they first started reproducing them. So if you need one of these, Dennis Carpenter or C&G, I think pretty much everyone. Dennis Carpenter's the one making them. C&G carries them, and I'm sure there's a few other outfits that carry the Dennis Carpenter parts because Carpenter makes a ton of parts for these trucks, and they use a lot of OEM molds and stuff. So they're really nice fitting parts. I'm gonna put this together with this one. It looks like a nice piece. I'm really happy with it. So let me clean the spot off here. I'll put this back in here for right now. Clean me off a spot to work, and I'll swap some dashes around. Alright, I'll be back. Got my little area cleaned up here. This is our old instrument cluster assembly. I figure we'll start tearing her down. All these little bulbs are all the same, so I usually just take them all out. Some of these might be good, some of them might be bad. Maybe just rebulb them all. We'll check all these. Clean the little contacts. They're brass, so they should clean up. And we'll look down inside of them and make sure the contacts look good in there. I've got this tarnish remover we'll use to clean the contacts with. And we'll start taking the backing assembly off. There's just 3 screws that hold it on here. Or actually 4, I'm sorry, 4. 3 on the top, 1 on the bottom. These are very, very simple. And now this portion will come off. We'll just take and set this aside for right now. And here we have our basic cluster setup. I'm gonna go, I thought I had a bottle of fluorescent. I'm gonna go find some fluorescent orange and paint up these needles, at least these two needles here, because they're white. They show the color down here, but up where the gauge actually reads, they're showing white. I want to fix that up a little bit, make them look right. Maybe the speedo needle too. It doesn't look too bad. But these two are hard to see in there, so. I might as well go ahead and start breaking this part down. Usually what I'll do is I'll jump to the speedometer. I ain't banging it around or nothing. And there's just the two screws here. Sometimes the screw will come out of there's a little metal washer. Whoa! That's why we have it on a soft shirt. Didn't hurt it none. At least I don't think it did. Nope, doesn't look like it. You want to carefully remove this seal too for our new housing. Normally you won't have to remove this if you're just doing repairs, but I bought a new one, but I'm trying because they didn't stock but one of them, so apparently these aren't a seal that they normally carry, which is fine. I'll reuse this one. I got it out, but I bought another one just in case I didn't get it out. Okay. Each one of these is held on by these little nuts, and they shouldn't be very tight. These pretty much only fit one way, but generally your fuel is always on the left and your temperature's on the right, and because of the way the shielding is, this gauge really won't even fit over there, so they're pretty much foolproof. Gauge and the shell, what's left of it. But once we get this printed circuit off, and you'll notice some circuits the lines are a lot more coppery. I don't know if moisture's gotten in there somehow. I mean, it was still working and there's nothing wrong with it. It's as long as there's no broken circuits, there's nothing to worry about. I mean, they should be normally more of a copper color, but it's just gotten in there. Some moisture must have somehow gotten in there and tarnished the circuit. But not a big deal, they still work. I'll clean up these contact points right here, scuff them up and use a little Tarnex on them, same way with here and here. And I can do that now, or I can do that when I take the printed circuit off. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to do it now on the old board. Yeah, it's weird how this, usually these don't turn green or get tarnished inside the circuit. I hope it doesn't mean there's something going on with the circuit. It was working. Everything, I mean, most things were working. The only reason why I was pulling this thing apart is because I had a bulb that was bad, or I thought was. It was one of these here, and the plastic, I went to take it out and the plastic just started crumbling. This original plastic gets so old and it just gets super, super brittle. Let me get a little fine sandpaper. Scuff those up a little bit. And this is just some super fine crocus cloth. You could probably use 200 grit or 240. Maybe a little bit more coarse, but You know, you don't want to get too crazy. You just want to get the corrosion off of there. If you got a little Dremel with a real fine sanding drum, that would probably work just as good too. But just to clean these contacts up. They do reproduce this printed circuit too, in case you did need one. And that's all you're doing. Doesn't have to be real crazy. And you could probably just do this. I've done just the Tarnix before, and Tarnix wasn't quite enough on something that's this nasty. Now, if it wasn't a lot of this corrosion like this, then it'd probably be a different story. You'd probably get away with just using Tarnix. But this one here, in my opinion, is a little nastier. And this circuit may not clean up and work properly. That's why I brought that other dash over, is because it had a little bit nicer looking circuit. It had a couple of these tarnished up a little bit, just the connection points, not the circuit. Well, actually, I can grab it sitting right over here. So you can actually see how much cleaner that circuit looks. But it has some tarnished terminals right here, which is not a big deal. And I could probably clean these up. This could be a better one to use. I think this was off a fairly low mile rig too. Well, it shows 40, so it could be a 140. I'm sure it was a parts dash. I mean, he kept all this stuff around for that reason. Because for a long time you couldn't get a lot of these parts, but now they're reproducing a lot of this stuff. These backings, they even reproduce the speedometer, reproduce the gauges. I mean, it's all. You start buying all that stuff, it starts adding up. It would be $400 or $500 into a dash just buying all new stuff. So much of this stuff as you can reuse, the better. I don't know if they reproduce this plate here. I would assume so, but they may not. This one I'm not sure about. But I know they do this one. I know the circuit board. I know the gauges. And then you're a little bit worried about quality. Usually the OEM stuff is a lot nicer. I may take this printed circuit off this dash and use it. It looks a little bit nicer. I don't know why mine got tarnished up like it did. Very strange. You can see how the circuit got real dark. I don't know why it did that. It's definitely unusual. I know this one, it worked. This one here doesn't look nearly as bad. I can put it in. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? And these terminals are cleaned up really nice here. Let's see, like even here, this thing is just, it's all busted to crud. I mean, this one will clean up. It'll probably work. And I don't think the tarnish has anything to do with it, as long as it's not on where all these connection points are. You know, we're getting good connections here. It'll work just fine. Why it got corroded and how, I don't know. The truck doesn't leak any water in the interior. I mean, I will admit it has sat quite a long time. See, that Tarnix is good about getting down in some of these areas, and here you can't quite get in there. Crocus cloth. Like I said, it was working before. Doesn't take much. You ain't hurting nothing. Like I said, I've done this 100 different times. As long as you're not breaking through anywhere else, these areas are designed to be exposed. The rest of this should be covered in the plastic or whatever that it was formed in. So as long as you're not breaking through there, you're not going to do any damage. Now I've seen this stuff when I've clean it with a Tarnix, I've seen it kind of do a weird varnish on it. I don't know if it's good or bad. I've taken a little bit of the crocus cloth and just scuffed it up one more time after doing this to it. But this way, going down here like this gets out of most little cracks and stuff. That those little bulbs leave a little crevice in there sometimes where they stop and lock. So you want to get this stuff down in there as best as you can. Yeah, see, that cleans up pretty good. I'm liking that. Get another shot of the crocus cloth. Looks like this is 180 if anyone wants to know. It's just a roll that somehow I ended up with. I think it's 180. I don't know, it feels finer than that. I'm only seeing like a 1.8. So I'm assuming it's a 180. I couldn't imagine it being 1800. This little device here is the voltage dropper. It mainly is for gauges and whatnot, because the gauges actually operate on less than 12 volts. I think they're 6 or 7 volts, if I remember right. But that's what this does, is this drops the voltage going to the gauges so that they operate properly. Theory is the 6 volt gauges are better gauge or 6 volts is better to use on the gauge because it's a slower sweeping gauge, whereas 12 volts are very quick. If anyone's owned a 56 Ford, any model of Ford, 1956 only, Ford used 12 volt gauges. My pickup's that way, and I left them stock. And the gauges move really fast. I mean, the reading and the needles move really fast, and as you drive down the road, you know, if you had a fuel gauge, the thing's just bouncing all over the damn place. The theory was that the 6 volt, it was much smoother, and when you're driving down the road, the gauge is, you know, stays more steady reading. Now, obviously, your oil pressure and stuff like that, it does move more rapidly, but not like it might on a 12 volt type setup. That might be the only gauge where it might be beneficial to be 12 volts over 6, so you can see the instantaneous drop that you might have with an issue with the engine or something like that, where a fast dropping gauge would be really beneficial. But this, I mean, this is only an idiot light dash, so it doesn't even have the oil gauge. My 78 has the deluxe gauge set up, the ammeter that doesn't really work, and water temp and oil pressure. So if your dash is this ugly and you don't have a replacement like I might be using here, this is kind of pretty much what you do. And like I said, there's nothing really wrong with this dash, other than the, you know, there's corrosion in there. I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna run this dash and I'm gonna see what it does, if I have any more problems with the circuitry. I mean, there's no broken connections, and it shouldn't really matter. It was working when I took it apart. Famous last words. This just lifts right off of there. Give it a couple dowel pins. Like so. Yeah, see here? This was the one right here that, see, look at that. It's just crumbling. And that's the one, that was the one of the instrument cluster, what was that? I don't remember what light that was. Oh, it was a turn signal, that's what it was. The turn signal indicator. See, there's another one. It's just crumbling. And they do that. It's pretty typical with these. You know, look at that. It's just whatever plastic they used just wasn't that great. So pretty much all we needed from this. This thing is garbage. This one has the backlight bulbs in it. That one had them. I was doing a swap on another dash at my dad's, and it didn't happen to have these, so I knew this one had them. And if the replacement dash didn't come with these, I was going to take it out of this one and put it in this backing if it didn't come with them. Oh man, you can feel the difference in this plastic. Yeah, way different. Now you can pretty much tell it. This is going to last a while. Yeah. This is definitely a much nicer piece. No doubt about it. You don't want to forget to put this guy in. Hopefully I can get him in there. Not have to use my other one. They reproduce them, but they just, it was weird. It's like they didn't have but one in stock, so I bought the one they had. I figured, well, we'll reuse this one if we can. It's just an isolator is all it really is. We got her in there. She was a little hard. Almost feel bad putting this crusty old piece of you-know-what in here. Boy, it looks like it got wet. I mean, just can't help but notice the way this thing looks. Somehow it was getting wet. I just seen a couple other spots I should probably touch up. Looks like the ground for the voltage regulator here too. So we'll give that a buff. And this is supposed to unsnap. I haven't tried taking one of these off because you can buy this voltage regulator separately. Very, very rarely do I ever see those go out. The electronics just gets in there and cleans all the rest of that gunk right out. Your new backing over here. Yeah, that's a good looking piece they did here. Look at that. Everything just dropped right into place. Beautiful. Couldn't ask for anything better for a reproduction. And Dennis Carpenter makes some nice stuff. A lot of people complain that he's expensive, but this is the kind of product you get. Oh, beautiful. I just like it when it's a nice reproduction part. I'm just cleaning up the contacts on these nuts. And it gives you a chance to inspect some of these. Like a couple of these arms are not quite bent right. And it might have been what was digging in there. So I'm going to straighten those up just a little bit. So I'm just going to take and just grab a hold of it. It shouldn't take much. Just pull it out just a bit. If it'll allow me to do it. I want you to be able to spring. It's springing. should work. So again, try to put the, see, temperature gauge is not gonna, it's not gonna fit in and fit right. And it'll go in, but it's not gonna fit right. You can see how it's hitting against the housing and stuff. It's gonna be fairly obvious. A little bit of corrosion there, don't I? Yeah, there's a lot of corrosion on this thing. This one doesn't say unleaded fuel only. It's a 76. That's kind of weird. This gauge is a D3TF. That's a D5TF there. It says unleaded gasoline only. I wonder what year that gauge is in there. I'm going to say just from sitting is why everything's got all this crap on it. I may rebuild that one and do it super nice. Because who's to say how long this one's going to last? We'll see. Trying to remain optimistic here. I like that. That looks nice. Yeah, jeez. See all that? Oh, that falling in my knee dash. And it just really, it would be nice to take all that apart and clean it up, but I'm not an expert on getting these apart and cleaning them up and repairing them. I'm afraid I'd mess it up. And you know, I could probably use, you know, that one feels good. I just have to write down the mileage difference when I change it. I mean, not that I need to legally or not, because it's over 25 years old, but for my own, you know, personal preference. And let this stuff just sit. And it could have been like this before I got to it, but I doubt it because I haven't been driving this truck hardly at all. And it just sits in my backyard. I used to drive it all the time, but once the floorboard started giving it the ghost, it wasn't much fun to drive when you were getting wetter in the cab than you were outside of the cab on a rainy day. I don't think anybody likes that, including the passenger who was riding with you. So I more or less pulled her off the road for that reason. I bought the floorboards for it. I just have neglected to put them in. Life has gotten in the way of things. Oh, that's cool. I just now noticed that. This says Manufacturer USA DC, and then it says right here, I don't know if you can read it, D6 UF 75 to 79 pickup has warning light with high beam light center, small plug, high beam light, and the idiot lights. So even if you bought this and it wasn't in its packaging and it's laying around on the shelf, it says right there what it fits. That's freaking awesome. So you go to a swap meet, the guy has a whole pile of these things. You can, granted, it's fairly obvious to the trained eye, you know, what to look for, the lights or gauges or You know, this part on the 73 to 5, this is filled in. I mean, this part of the circuit has nothing there either. I didn't realize it was sitting on the speedometer. Alright, it's getting late. I'm done for the night. So anyways, that's pretty much no secret. You just take your time. I mean, this cleaned up really nice compared to what it was. I mean, you saw what it was like. And all these guys here, they need to have these little prongs cleaned. And you can run the Tarnex on them. I'll run the Tarnex down on the inside. Let me see if I can get this bulb out. Ugh. There we go. I'll clean up the, see, even these are a little cruddy. I'll clean up all these contacts in the bulbs too. I mean, why not? They worked. Just need to be cleaned up a little bit. And then you can see how corroded they are, you know, down inside there. Get in there as best you can. Some of these I might not be able to save. We'll see. I'll play with them. I don't know why this thing is so corroded, but it is. But I can guarantee you it's neglect. I'm guilty of it. Neglect of letting it sit. But that's all we got in the shop now. We're going to get her going again. And, oh, I think we're done chewing gum. We're going to get her going again. And I want to drive it again.